Hello to some, and welcome back to others. My name is Cece, the illustrious wizard. I created this YouTube channel for D&D players. I aim to make content to inspire people to play the game I love, called D&D. My second video was supposed to be a character build, but I shifted to helping players with the new rules. This video is about the changes to casting spells. Sit back, have a good berry, and enjoy the show. Hello, this is Cece here. I know that I just said that I was going to make a video on Nancia of the Wild, but I decided to make a quick shift to explaining the new rules for 2024 to help players with the transition. Um, and I decided to start with spells, which is my favorite thing. So let's go to casting spells on chapter 7. If you have your handbook, is in page 236. And the most important thing is going to be in the bottom left hand corner, and it is the one spell with a spell slot per turn. This is the major difference between 2014 and 2024. It is very similar, but it is different. On a turn, you can expand only one spell slot to cast a spell. This rule means you can't, for example, cast a spell slot using the magic action and another one using a bonus action on the same turn. Alright, so basically, if you use a spell slot, you can only use one spell slot per turn regardless of how you used it. It doesn't matter if it was a magic action, bonus action. If it used the spell slot, it used the spell slot, and that's all you can get for that turn. That is huge because it includes reactions, and that is huge because it changes how the counter spell mechanic works. You can no longer defend yourself with counter spell. So let's say you cast Fireball. They then cast Counterspell. You no longer can cast Counterspell to defend yourself. However, because of the changes to Counterspell, there's a chance that your Fireball will still go off. And I want to take a slight pause to look at the spell Counterspell, because Counterspell is a major part of spell casting. Counter spell. Let's go here. Spell C. Scroll down. And there's counter spell. Alright, counter spell is still a level 3 abjuration spell known by sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards. Okay, it's still a reaction which you take when you can see a creature within 60 feet of yourself casting a spell with verbal, somatic, or material components. Okay. And the difference this time is, I will read it and you will be able to tell the difference. You attempt to interrupt a creature in the process of casting a spell. The creature makes a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, the spell dissipates with no effect, and the action, bonus action, or reaction used to cast it is wasted. If that spell was cast with a spell slot, the slot isn't expanded. Okay, so the first major change you should notice is that level 1 through 3 spells are no longer automatically counter spelled. Now, regardless of what level the spell is, you do get an opportunity to you now get an opportunity for that spell to get through. You only have to make your Constitution saving throw. All right. The second thing you have to notice is that it's simply a Constitution saving throw now. It used to be levels 1 through 3 spells are automatically countered, and spells that were higher than level 3 required an ability check. Basically, if it was 10 plus whatever the level of the spell was. So let's say, I don't know, Dimension Door, I believe it's level 4. So it would have been 14, and all you had to do to counterspell Dimension Door was roll a 14 with your ability score modifier. Now is just simply a Constitution saving throw. If also the difference is that if that spell, let's say you cast, let's say you were using Fireball, they use Counterspell, you fail your Constitution save, and your Fire spell is dissipates, you still get to keep your level 3 spell slot. And that's the last sentence. If that spell was cast with a spell slot, the slot isn't expanded. So if Counterspell counters your spell, regardless of what spell it is, you still get to keep the spell slot. So if you cast a high level 7 spell, a high level 6 spell, like I don't know, maybe a force wall or a force cage, and they were able to counter spell it. Well, guess what? You get to keep your spell slot, and that is how things have changed. And it's a good change and bad change at the same time. It's definitely a nerf, but I am very interested because it is going to make um, boss fights a lot. I mean, it's going to make boss fights interesting because now liches, for example, um, or any boss fight who has legendary resistances, if anybody tries to counterspell them, they can just use their legendary resistance to automatically pass that con save. So now those big bad are going to be able to use their spells with um, almost perfect immunity, depending on the situation, and that is going to I think that's going to actually improve the game a little bit. But that is how Counterspell works in 2024. Now let's get back to just how spells work in general. Sorry about that small deviation, but if you're going to talk about spells, you got to talk about Counterspell. Now, like I was saying, one spell slot per turn. All right. Now, how do you cast multiple spells in 2024 with this new rule? Well, if you scroll up, you'll see it says casting without slots. There are several ways to cast a spell without expanding a spell slot. Cantrips. A cantrip is cast without a spell slot. So basically, this right here is the terminology to look for if you want to cast multiple spells in 2024 without expanding a spell slot. When you see that term, when you see them use this, that means you have a chance to cast multiple spells in a turn. So cantrips do not use spell slots. So let's go to the tried and true, a combination that a lot of people know is Warlocks, Hex, and Eldritch Blast. Can you do that in 2024? Well, let's find out. Hex. Hex hasn't changed. It's still a bonus action to cast, concentration up to 1 hour. You place a curse on a creature that you can see within range. Until the spell ends, you deal an extra 1d6 necrotic damage to the target whenever you hit it with an attack roll. Also choose one ability. When you cast a spell, the target has disadvantage on an ability check made with the chosen spell, and of course you can transfer it with a bonus action later on. So as a bonus action, you can cast Hex, and when you do that, that is going to be your one spell with a spell slot per turn. So you are no longer as a bonus action. So you can't cast another spell with the spell slot. However, cantrips is a spell that doesn't use a spell slot. So when you go up here and you go to Eldritch Blast, it's a cantrip. And so basically, without a spell slot and with a spell slot, you can do both in one turn. So you can cast a spell with a spell slot and you can cast a spell without a spell slot. And so Eldritch Blast still works. You basically hurl a beam, making a ranged spell attack against one creature or object in range. That is also a little change people may not know about, but you can actually target an object. On a hit, the target takes 1d10 force damage. Um, and that is how you can cast two spells in one turn. So, yes, Hex and Eldritch Blast still works because you are casting a spell without a spell slot as your action, and then you're casting one with a spell slot with your bonus action, which is all thumbs up. Next, they say rituals is something you can cast without a spell slot, which is true, but that takes 10 minutes or longer, and that is not something you will be doing in in combat, so I'm going to skip that. And then special abilities. Some characters and monsters have special abilities that allow them to cast specific spells without a spell slot. The casting is usually limited in another way, such as being able to cast a spell a limited number of times per day. Okay, so what are they talking about here? Let's let's I can give you an example. Let's stick to warlocks. Let's go to a subclass. Let's go to Archfey. All right, here you go. Without expanding a spell slot. That is the terminology you are looking for. So here it says you can cast Misty Step without expanding a spell slot a number of times equal to your charisma modifier, and you regain all expanded uses when you finish a long rest. That is what Steps of the Fae does. So for three, when level three, you probably have a charisma modifier of three. So 3 times a day, you can basically cast Misty Step, and then you can cast another spell. Why? Because similar to cantrips, you're not using is without a spell slot. That's what you're looking for without a spell slot. Special ability. As long as you are not using a spell slot, that's the terminology you're looking for. Without a spell slot, you're good. You can then, because Misty Step did not use a spell slot, it frees up your magic action to where you can cast Fairy Fire if you wanted to. You can cast Phantasmal Force or Sleep as an action. Or you can, Eldritch Blast doesn't use up doesn't use a spell slot neither, but that's another option you can have. But that is an example of an ability that you can cast and not use a spell slot. Let me see. Another example would be the the ranger. Let's see here. Ranger. Favorite enemy. Favorite enemy says you always have the Hunter's Mark spell prepared. You can cast it twice without expanding a spell slot. So there you go, without expanding a spell slot. I do not know range. So you can cast Hunter's Mark, and I'm gonna get out my book real quick to see if there is a first level spell that you can actually cast with that, because you get your bonus action out, and then you can perfect. You can cast Hunter's Mark, and then you can go use Cure Wounds on somebody. That way, you can already have your hunter's mark on somebody, and then that way next turn you can go ahead and start attacking somebody. And let's say you are using two weapon fighting, you can go and use that extra bonus action attack or something, um, if you have the feat. Let's see. And there's other examples. Let's go to origin feats. Now, most of these abilities, if you've noticed, are limited in the amount of times you can actually do it. Um, the Warlock, the Fey Warlock, can only do Misty Step equal to the Charisma modifier. The Ranger, it was starting at favorite enemy, you could use it twice per long rest. With these feats, they're going to be once per long rest, I believe. Yep. So whatever spell you choose from the Magic Initiative, you will see that you can cast it once without a spell slot. And you gain the ability to cast it in that way when you finish a long rest. But that is another example of where you can cast without a spell slot. Let's go to the general feats. One of my favorite, one of my favorite feats is Fey Touch, and it says you can cast each of these spells without expanding a spell slot. But of course, it's once you cast it this way, you have to finish a long rest before you can do it again. But still, you can still use it once and then cast a spell. Um, let's take an example. Um, Being able to use Misty Step on like a cleric, and then casting spiritual guardians. So you can Misty Step away, get yourself in a really good position where your spiritual guardians can hit multiple creatures, and you can activate spiritual guardians to hit multiple creatures. Um, let's see. Then there, what's another example? What's the one that turns you invisible? Invisible Shadow Touch also should have the wording. There you go. Without expanding a spell slot. So just know that while you're reading the book and going through the rules, whenever you come across without expanding a spell slot, know that is simply saying it should just start a little alarm in your head that's, oh, I can use this to cast two spells in one turn. All right. And of course, let's see. I believe next thing is spell scrolls and other magic items contain spells that can be cast without a spell slot. The description of such an item specifies how many times a spell can be cast from it. Um, so I'm the core handbook doesn't really have an example, have any spell scrolls or stuff like magic items in it. That's going to be in the Dungeon Master Guide. But if you are using, um, but if you have spell scrolls and magic items, hey, you can use a bonus action to cast one spell using a spell slot, and then you can use a spell scroll. I think spell scrolls and magic items are now going to be used a lot more just because of the fact that you can use two spells per turn via the fact that using a magic item is without can be cast without a spell slot. Um, and that is really the major difference between 2014 and 2024. Um, you can no longer counterspell when you are counterspelled. You can only cast one spell slot per turn, and as long as you are casting without spending a spell slot. You can use 2 spells per turn. And that is really the major changes between 2014 and 2024. I hope you enjoyed this video and found that it informative. If you did, please like and subscribe. And until next time, enjoy your stay at the mansion. And if you did not subscribe, hopefully I'll see you again.